Good morning. It's Lisa with Lisa Heal Yourself, and today we are going to talk about hiding. Hiding our true selves when we are chronically ill, and why this is such a problem, and why this is keeping us from healing our chronic condition. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please go ahead and do that. Hit the like button and share this with anyone you think it will help. Let's get into it. Hiding. Just take that in for a moment. We know that we can't heal when we're suppressing and repressing our emotions or our feelings that have been pushed down and buried. But what about hiding parts of ourselves, parts of our identity, parts of ourselves that we feel great and deep shame about? This is what I'm talking about when we're talking about chronic illness. A lot of us who are suffering with chronic illness, whether it's a physical illness, like a fibromyalgia, pain condition, chronic pain, or chronic fatigue syndrome, or cancer even. Well, cancer's a little different because people see that as something that's not your fault and you're not to blame. But many other diseases, many other conditions, especially that don't have a clear-cut diagnosis and treatment plan, anything that's a mental health condition, a lot of people feel deep shame and guilt about these conditions. And because of that deep shame and guilt, they often hide the fact that they are even sick. So think about your own chronic condition for a minute, okay? And I want you to think, what part of that is shameful for you? What part of that don't you let others see? So I know for myself, when I was severely chronically ill, and I was in such desperation and such pain, and I was so sad and lonely and helpless and hopeless, and I really did need help. I was broken. And it was at that time when I was most broken that I felt the most shame and the most pressure to hide that brokenness from the world. So take that in for a minute. The more broken we are, the more help we need, the more love and acceptance we need from the world around us, the more we feel the need to hide ourselves. When we hide our conditions, like somebody asks us how we are and we're like, oh, we're fine, but we have severe pain. Or when we meet somebody on the street and we put on a positive face, a positive attitude, positive energy. We go around the day, and I know I did, so as not to upset or scare my children, I completely hid my illness from them 100%. Now, how could I do that? How could I even do that? Well, it was one of the most difficult things I ever did, was going through the illness, but even on top of that, even more difficult was going through it while hiding it from my own children. The reason I hid it from them is because the onset, they were so little that I couldn't explain it to them. I couldn't tell them, and I absolutely at that point had no idea how bad it would get and how long it would go on. So I thought that hiding it from them in the beginning, when they were young and I really didn't know what was happening myself or how deep and how long it would go, was protecting them. It was protecting them. But it was also protecting me. It was protecting my ideal identity of myself. I didn't want to see myself that way. I didn't want to become a sick mother, a bad mother, a mother who was like that in their eyes. So although it was protecting them from having to see me like that, or them as they got older from the stigma of their friends or other acquaintances or neighbors wondering and talking about me, and that would somehow make their life harder or worse. I never wanted that for them. But it also protected my own vision and my own idealistic vision of who I thought I was and who I always wanted to be as a mother. And that illness, my chronic illness, was not going to take that from me. So I did put on a brave face in front of my kids. I did smile and I did hold it down with all of my other emotions, with all of my other feelings, with all of those things that I was suppressing. I was literally suppressing my own chronic illness. It couldn't be shown in front of my children. So I could barely focus when my kids were around. I was almost like bearing down on the pain. I had hardly any, oh, look at the snow. I hardly had any energy, right, for them at all or for anything because I was so focused like a woman in labor, just breathing to get through the pain, that when they finally did leave the room, or I finally, would lock myself in the shower and cry, or when they finally went to bed, I gave them a very early bedtime so that I could lock myself in the room and cry and let it out, because you cannot keep these things down. You cannot keep suppressed and repressed emotions and feelings, and specifically your illness or your problems, down. You cannot hide them, right? But we try to hide them from acquaintances and neighbors and people. And there may be people in your life that you share your chronic illness or your chronic pain or conditions with. There are people that you share it with, somebody close to you, a trusted source. Maybe you have a best friend or a spouse or a partner or a parent. And what happens is we let all of our feelings out to this one person, okay? Think about the responsibility for that person to have to shoulder and carry that. In my case, it was my husband. He would witness me crying, screaming, writhing in pain, right? And nobody else would, because I would hold it in. But a person can only hold in and push down for so long before it comes up. And when it comes up so violently, like a pressure cooker, right? When you finally let out that steam, it comes pouring out. Okay, because this isn't a gentle release over time throughout the day. This is I've held it in as long as I can today, and now it's going to come out. So it really puts a toll on the relationship or the helping person that you do have in your life, because this person shoulders and has to see all of the emotion and all the steam coming out at once. And that is too much for your container to hold, but it's too much for their container to witness and to hold going out into the atmosphere day after day around them. It's a lot of pressure, and this is how it ruins relationships. So when we hide parts of ourself, parts of our emotions, parts of our body, parts of our illness from the world, because we have shame and guilt and fear of abandonment and inadequacy and judgment and fear of criticism and being left and being unloved and abandoned and not safe and not secure in our world anymore, right? We are protecting ourselves, and that is what suppression and repression at its core is. That is why you suppress and repress emotions, to protect yourself and the ones you love, but mostly yourself. You are protecting yourself. This is not a conscious decision. Your autonomic nervous system is protecting yourself from what it fears most, which is being unsafe, unloved, abandoned, alone in this world. So you can see that this is a cycle. And a lot of us have these stigmas against our own selves. We have a lot of anger towards our own selves for being sick, for having this illness, for not being able to figure it out, for not being able to heal it, for not being the mother or the wife or the friend or the person that you want to be in the eyes of the rest of the world. So we feel like a failure. We feel inadequate. We feel rejected. We feel alone, and we feel very shameful about this, because all we want at the heart is to be included, is to be loved, is to be accepted. So these are the types of things that we must stop if we want to heal chronic illness. We must be able to share our deepest wounds. And if we cannot share our illness with others out in the world, and we don't think it's fair to either put that on them, or we just can't bring ourselves to be that person in their eyes, we have to at least be that person in our own eyes. We have to at least find the moments to acknowledge this, to sit with this, to feel this, to heal this shame that we have about ourselves, about our own bodies, our own minds that have betrayed and abandoned us. We need time to sit with and heal these most deep inner wounds, because until we can come to peace with this within ourselves, we can never show our true faces to the world. Right? I walked around and I hid my eyes. I averted my eyes from people for years. I wore sunglasses. I looked down. I looked away. I didn't know why. I couldn't look at another human being, but it was because I had felt so much shame. And until we make peace and heal our own ability to love ourselves, forgive ourselves, and accept ourselves where we are, right here, right now, in all our failures, in all our inadequacies, in everything that, in all our shame, in everything that we think that we've done wrong. Listen to me. You're beautiful. You're amazing. This isn't your fault. You didn't do this, right? You have to be okay with who and what you are and where you are. You have to allow that to be okay, to be enough. I think one of the hardest things when I was on my journey was feeling so alone, so cut off from the world and cut off from people. And I thought they had all abandoned me. They had all left me. And partly they had, but partly I abandoned them. I abandoned them because I no longer talked to them. I hid myself from them. I didn't look at them anymore. I didn't call them anymore. I didn't want them to know. I was so afraid of losing them forever. I was so afraid of their words. I was so afraid of what they would think that I caused the abandonment, because I turned away from what I needed most. I turned away. I turned myself away. And so it was a very lonely and very long journey. You know, a lot of your suppression is coming from this fear, this deep fear of being rejected and abandoned. It's coming from this deep shame that you have, that you're somehow less than, not worthy, and a failure, right? And it causes a lot of grief. It causes a lot of grief and anger, sadness. It causes a lot of inner feelings that we also must suppress along with it. So I'm not saying that you're going to be able to go out and show your illness to the world or talk about it, but it is important that we tell our stories, that we feel heard, that we feel witnessed, if only to ourselves, that we can be forgiven, that we can be still loved, and that we can heal the shame that lives within us. Because it will help you. It is one step closer to healing yourself. So if you haven't checked out any of my videos on healing deep shame, then please do that now. And if you haven't watched my playlist on healing trauma, it's really important that we learn how to heal this deepest shame that we carry about ourselves. And about our illness and about what's happening with ourselves. Once we can make peace with that, we can start to begin the healing process. But if we think that we're going to heal and we're going to be able to get through the healing process without addressing or facing or showing our true face to the world, then we're mistaken. We are mistaken. And I know for myself, I thought, I'll show my true face once I'm healed. I'll show my true face once I'm better. Once I'm okay, then I'll tell my story. Then I'll tell everybody what I went through. You know, it's not how it works, right? I'm not saying you have to go broadcast all your deepest insecurities and your deepest, feelings and traumas and hurts and illnesses to the world. That's not what I'm saying. But when we hide our feelings and when we want to cry, but instead we put on a smile, when we act like we're okay, but we're not. That's trapping. So I'm not saying we have to lay it all on everybody and that there isn't a time and place to put on a brave face and get through things. But we have to recognize that within ourselves. We have to go sit with ourselves. We have to allow ourselves that feeling to rise, to sit with, to cry, to feel it. We just have to allow ourselves to feel these things as they are coming up, as they are rising, giving ourselves permission to allow them to come up and out, throughout our day, to really be with ourselves rather than keep pushing them down, keep pushing through, keep ignoring, keep turning away from. And we need to not keep pushing it down, carrying on with our day, day in and day out, until it builds up so much that our chronic illness gets so bad because there's nowhere else for it to go but through our bodies and out. It needs to express. So I'm urging you, you need to feel. You need to feel this deepest shame. You need to allow up. You need to be present with yourself. You need to love yourself. You need to forgive yourself. You need to sit with yourself. You need to allow these feelings to come up, even if you do nothing about them, to acknowledge them, to hear them, and to ultimately heal them so that you can move through and you can continue on without further repression and suppression that is making you sicker, that is making you worse, and that is keeping you from exactly what you want, which is to be healed. So if you haven't subscribed, please go ahead and do that now. Please share this video with anyone you think that may help. Please check out my video on shame. Please check out my playlist on trauma. And remember, you need to do the work. There's no bypassing that. We have to go through it in order to heal. I will see you in the next video.